the nightmare always started the same way. The heat, the dust, the metallic taste of fear coating his tongue like copper pennies. Isaac jerked awake in his tent under the overpass, sweating through the threadbare sleeping bag despite the November cold seeping through the tarp. His hands shook as he pressed them against his face, dog tags clinking softly against his chest, the only possession that still mattered. 24 years old and living like this. 2 years since his discharge, 14 months on the streets. The faces of his unit stared at him from the photograph he kept folded in his pocket. Rodriguez, Carson, Pike. 3 empty spaces where men used to stand. Isaac pushed himself upright, muscles aching from sleeping on concrete. Through the gaps in the tarp, he could see the other tents in the encampment, silhouettes against the sodium lights of the highway above. Nobody stirred. It was that dead hour before dawn when the world felt emptiest. He touched the dog tags again, steadying his breathing like the VA therapist had taught him before he'd stopped going. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. It helped sometimes. Sometimes it didn't. The sun rose slowly over the city, indifferent to the men and women huddled beneath its bridges. Isaac packed his few belongings with military precision, clothes rolled tight, sleeping bag compressed, the photograph safely tucked away. Everything fit in the battered backpack that had followed him from base to home to the streets. He walked to the public library when it opened, used the bathroom to clean up as best he could. The security guard watched him with tired eyes but said nothing. Isaac had learned to move quietly, to take up as little space as possible, to disappear into the background of normal life. That evening, hunger drove him to the strip mall on Fairview Avenue. The all-night diner there didn't chase him off if he stayed in the parking lot, kept to the shadows. Sometimes they threw out food that was still good. Sometimes the night cook, an older woman with kind hands, would slip him a burger through the back door. He was sitting on the curb behind the dumpster when he heard the voices. Loud, aggressive, male. The kind of voices that made his combat instincts flare to life before his conscious mind caught up. Through the gap between buildings, Isaac could see the front parking lot. A woman was walking to her car, keys in hand, shoulders squared with the particular alertness women developed for navigating dark parking lots. She was maybe late 20s, wearing scrubs decorated with cartoon animals, probably worked at the veterinary clinic next door. 4 men were following her. Their movements had that loose, aggressive quality that came from too much alcohol and too little consequence. Isaac's pulse quickened. The woman, Sierra, he'd later learn, reached her car, a practical sedan with a faded bumper sticker. She moved to unlock it, but the leader of the group stepped in front of her door. Even from a distance, Isaac could see the way she stiffened. "Hey there, princess," the leader called out. He was tall, thick-shuttled, wearing a varsity jacket like he was still in high school instead of pushing 30. "Where you going so fast? Move, Vaughn." Her voice carried across the lot, firm but with an edge of caution. "I'm not doing this tonight." "Oh, come on." Vaughn spread his arms wide, blocking her path. His 3 friends circled closer, forming a loose semicircle. "We just want to talk. You're always so protected, Daddy's little biker princess. But Daddy's not here now, is he?" Isaac was on his feet before he consciously decided to move. Years of training overrode 14 months of learned invisibility. His body knew what to do even as his rational mind screamed that this wasn't his fight, that he should stay hidden, that he couldn't trust himself in confrontation. But some things you just couldn't walk away from. He crossed the parking lot in long strides, every muscle memory from boot camp flooding back. "Step away from her." His voice came out flat, command-hard. "Now!" All 5 heads turned. Vaughn's face split into a grin that had nothing friendly in it. "Well, well, look what crawled out from under a rock. You her knight in shining armor, homeless boy." Isaac could smell himself. 3 days since his last real shower, clothes that had been worn too long. He was aware of how he must look. Gaunt, ragged, dangerous in all the wrong ways. But he held his ground, positioning himself between Sierra and the men. "Just walk away," Isaac said quietly. "All of you." Vaughn laughed, and his friends joined in. "Or what? You gonna fight all 4 of us? Look at you, man. You can barely stand." It was true. Isaac was malnourished, weakened by months of inadequate food and sleep, but he'd been trained by the best, trained to fight even when exhausted and terrified and broken. He shifted his weight, hands loose at his sides, body remembering what his mind tried to forget. Vaughn moved first, a wild swing telegraphed by his shoulder. Isaac slipped it easily, drove his fist into the man's solar plexus with surgical precision. Vaughn went down gasping. The second man rushed in. Isaac dropped him with an elbow strike to the temple, movements flowing like water. For 3 seconds he was a Marine again, competent and deadly. Then the other two hit him at once. Numbers and desperation overcame training. Isaac felt ribs crack as they drove him to the pavement. Fists rained down, boots found soft tissue. He tried to cover his head, tried to roll away, but there were too many of them. Somewhere in the chaos he heard Sierra screaming, heard her on the phone. "Dad, Dad, I need help. Parking lot at the clinic." Isaac took a boot to the face, tasted blood. The world went fuzzy at the edges. He heard Vaughn back on his feet, snarling. "Stupid homeless trash. Should have minded your own business." Another kick. Isaac's vision tunneled, but he could see Sierra's shoes, still there, still safe. He'd done that much at least. Then, cutting through the fog of pain, engines. Multiple engines, deep and powerful. The distinctive rumble of motorcycles, lots of them. The beating stopped abruptly. Through swelling eyes, Isaac saw his attackers stumble backward, saw fear replace their aggressive postures. The parking lot filled with light and sound as what looked like 20 motorcycles roared in, forming a circle around the scene. Men dismantled, moving with coordinated purpose. Large men, bearded, wearing leather cuts that marked them as something official, something organized. "Sierra!" A voice cut through everything, rough with age and authority and fear. "Baby girl, you hurt?" "I'm fine, Dad," but he's not. Sierra's face appeared in Isaac's limited field of vision, her hands surprisingly gentle as they checked his injuries. They were going to... He stopped them. He put himself between... "Get him up," the authoritative voice commanded. "Flint, Jasmine, gentle. He's hurt bad. Roadhouse, call it in. Ambulance, but to regional, not county. Tell them we're bringing in a trauma case." Hands lifted Isaac carefully. He tried to speak, to explain he couldn't afford a hospital, but his jaw didn't work right. The world tilted sickeningly. The last thing he registered before darkness took him was the sound of bones breaking and screams that weren't his own. Justice, administered with brutal efficiency. Then nothing. Isaac woke in pieces. First, the absence of pain, or rather its muffling under medication. Then the steady beep of monitors, the antiseptic smell of hospital. Clean sheets against skin that couldn't remember the last time it had touched clean sheets. He tried to move, gasped as his ribs protested. Everything hurt, but it was the managed hurt of injuries being properly treated. The fourth in his arm. Bandages he could feel on his face and torso. "Easy, son." The voice was gravelly, aged by decades and cigarettes. "You're safe. Regional VA hospital. You've been out about 18 hours. Isaac's eyes focused slowly on the man sitting beside his bed. Late 50s, maybe 60, with a gray beard and weathered face. Sharp eyes that had seen things, knew things. He wore a leather vest, a cut Isaac's military brain supplied, with patches that marked rank and allegiance. "Who?" Isaac's voice cracked. "Name's Nomad. I'm president of the local chapter." The man gestured to a water cup with a straw. "And more relevant to you, Sierra's father. You put yourself between my daughter and 4 men who meant her harm. That means we need to talk." Isaac sipped the water, his mind struggling through the medication fog. "Is she?" "She's fine. Shaken up, angry as hell, but fine. Because of you." Nomad leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Those men won't be bothering anyone for a while. They're currently explaining themselves to some very unsympathetic police officers. My lawyers are making sure charges stick. I'm nobody." Isaac whispered. "Just some homeless vet. Probably made things worse." Nomad's eyes sharpened at one word. "Vet?" His hand moved to Isaac's hospital gown, pulled it aside to reveal the dog tags. He read them silently, then nodded slowly. "What unit, son?" 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Helmand Province. The words came automatically, muscle memory of identity. Something shifted in Nomad's expression. He sat back in his chair, and for a long moment just looked at Isaac with eyes that understood too much. 1st Cavalry Division, Ayadrang Valley, 1967. He touched a small pin on his cut, a military insignia, faded but carefully maintained. Different war, same nightmares. The words hung between them, a recognition that needed no elaboration. Isaac felt something crack in his chest, some wall he'd built to survive the streets. "How long you been out there?" Nomad asked quietly. "On the streets?" 14 months. Isaac's voice was barely audible. "Discharged 2 years ago. Wide. 3 men didn't make it. I did. Couldn't figure out how to be a civilian. Couldn't hold a job. Couldn't stop the nightmares. Family tried, they did. But I was too broken. Used up their patience, their money. Ended up under the overpass." Nomad nodded slowly, no judgment in his face. "VA help you?" "For a while. Then I missed appointments. Fell through the cracks." Isaac closed his eyes. "Easier to just disappear. Hurt less than watching people give up on me. I know that feeling," Nomad said. "Took me 8 years after I came home before I stopped wanting to disappear. Another 10 before I figured out how to live with what I'd seen." He paused. "Sierra told me you were terrified. She could see it in your eyes when you stepped in. But you did it anyway. Some things you can't walk away from." "No," Nomad agreed. "Some things you can't." He was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward again. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay in this hospital until the doctors say you're healed. 3 broken ribs, fractured jaw, concussion, various other damage. Week, maybe 2. During that time, I'm going to be visiting, and we're going to talk. Really talk." "Why?" "On the word. You don't owe me anything. You stood between my daughter and harm. You took a beating meant for her. That creates a debt." Nomad's voice was firm. "And beyond that, you're a Marine, son. You fought for this country and came home broken. And we let you fall through the cracks. That's a debt too, one I take personally." Over the next 10 days, Nomad kept his word. He visited every afternoon, sometimes with Sierra, sometimes alone. They talked about deployments, about the disconnect of coming home, about the weight of survivor's guilt. Nomad didn't push, didn't pry, just offered his own stories in trade for Isaac's. Sierra came too, bringing books and decent food smuggled past the nurses. She was different than Isaac expected, not pampered or protected despite her father's position, but independent and sharp-minded. She talked about veterinary school, about her work with rescue animals, about finding purpose in healing. "You remind me of some of the dogs we get," she said one afternoon, sitting in the visitor's chair while Isaac ate actual pizza instead of hospital food. "The ones who've been hurt, who've forgotten they're allowed to trust anyone, but they remember, eventually, with patience." "I'm not a rescue project," Isaac said, "but without heat." "No," Sierra agreed. "You're a person who helped a stranger when it cost you everything. That's not broken, Isaac. That's the opposite of broken." On the 8th day, Nomad brought another visitor, older than Nomad, with scarred hands and the careful movements of someone who'd rebuilt themselves from pieces. He wore a cut similar to Nomad's, with a patch that read gravel. "Isaac, this is one of my oldest brothers," Nomad said. "Figured you two should meet." Gravel sat down, studied Isaac for a long moment. "Army Ranger, Fallujah, 2005. Came home with half my hearing and all my nightmares. Lived under the same overpass you're sleeping under now. That was 8 years ago." Isaac looked at him, really looked, saw the scars but also the steadiness, the clear eyes, the posture of someone who'd found solid ground. "Nomad and the club pulled me out," Gravel continued. "Literally dragged my ass to the VA, sat through my therapy sessions, gave me work when I was ready. Gave me a reason to stay alive when I'd stopped seeing one." He leaned forward. "I know what you're thinking, that you don't deserve help, that you're too broken, that you'll just disappoint everyone again. I thought all that too. I was wrong." Isaac's throat tightened. "What if you're not wrong? What if I can't?" "Then we fail together," Gravel said simply. "But we don't abandon our brothers, ever." On the 10th day, Nomad came with a serious expression and a folder full of papers. "Doctors say you can discharge tomorrow, so we need to talk about what happens next." Isaac's chest tightened. Back to the overpass. Back to the cold and the hunger and the slow erasure. I appreciate everything you've done. The hospital, the visits. But I can't pay for any of this, and I can't ask for more. You're not asking. I'm offering. Nomad opened the folder. We have an apartment over the clubhouse garage. Small but private. It's yours if you want it. Isaac stared. I can't. Yes, you can. Before you refuse, hear the rest. We run a legitimate security business, contracting for events, private protection, consulting. Your military training is exactly what we need. The pay is solid, health insurance included. Schedule is flexible enough to work around VA appointments. I can't promise I won't fall apart, Isaac whispered. I can't promise I won't mess this up. Nobody's asking for promises, Nomad said. Just effort. You show up, you try, you let us help. That's it. If you have a bad day, you have a bad day. If you need time, you take time, but you don't disappear on us. Deal? Isaac looked at the papers, lease agreement, employment application, appointment card for a therapist Nomad personally recommended. His hands shook. Why? He asked again. The question that had haunted him for 10 days. Nomad met his eyes. Because 40 years ago, someone asked me that same question. I'd just come home from Vietnam, drinking myself to death, picking fights I couldn't win. An old World War II vet found me in an alley and asked what unit I served with. Spent the next 2 years making sure I survived long enough to want to survive. He's gone now, has been for 20 years. But I made him a promise before he died that I'd pass it forward, that I'd never walk past a veteran drowning in the dark. His voice roughened. So that's why, Isaac. Because we don't leave our brothers behind. Not overseas, not at home. Isaac tried to speak, couldn't, just nodded, tears cutting tracks down his bruised face. One more thing, Nomad added, pulling out another paper. This is an appointment with Dr. Chen at the VA. She specializes in combat PTSD. She's expecting you next Thursday. I'll drive you there myself if you want. The following morning, Isaac walked out of the hospital wearing donated clothes that actually fit, carrying a bag with toiletries and basics. The club was waiting, not just Nomad, but a dozen members on their motorcycles, engines rumbling in the parking lot. We don't do anything halfway, Nomad said with a slight smile. You're one of ours now. That means you get the full treatment. They rode in formation through the city, Isaac riding behind Nomad. The wind in his face felt like freedom, like possibility, like being part of something again. The apartment above the garage was small but perfect, furnished simply, bed, couch, small kitchen, but the walls held photographs, and Isaac stopped when he saw them. 5 men in military uniforms, each photo labeled with a name and unit. Below each, a second photo of the same man, older now, smiling at a club gathering. Our brothers, Nomad said from the doorway. All veterans, all pulled back from the edge at different times. Gravel you met. The others are Briggs, Riley, Shepherd, and Roadhouse. We have a saying, once a soldier, always a soldier. That bond doesn't break just because the war ends. Sierra appeared with boxes of food, started stocking the kitchen while pretending not to watch Isaac's reactions. There's a laundry in the basement. Wi-Fi password is on the fridge, and my number is programmed into that phone on the counter. Call anytime for any reason. Over the following weeks, Isaac learned the rhythms of his new life. Therapy on Thursdays with Dr. Chen, who didn't accept excuses but also didn't push too hard. Work 3 days a week with the security team, learning new skills while using old ones. Quiet evenings in the apartment, reading or watching TV without the constant vigilance the streets required. The nightmares didn't stop. Some nights he still woke gasping, still saw Rodriguez's face in the moment before the IED detonated. But now he had Dr. Chen's number to call, had medication that helped, had Gravel's extension for those 3 a.m. moments when survival felt impossible. Bad night? Gravel would ask, no judgment in his voice. Yeah. Want to talk or just company? Sometimes they talked. Sometimes Gravel just stayed on the line, breathing steady, reminding Isaac he wasn't alone in the dark. 3 months in, Nomad approached him after a security shift. We're having a ceremony Friday night, something we do for the veterans we've helped. I'd like you to be part of it. Friday arrived cold and clear. The clubhouse was packed with members and their families. Isaac felt out of place among these people who'd found their footing, but Sierra appeared at his elbow, steady and grounding. "You belong here," she said quietly. "Stop fighting it." Nomad called for silence, then motioned Isaac forward. 5 other men joined him. Gravel, Briggs, Riley, Shepard, and Roadhouse. All veterans, all survivors. 10 years ago, we started a tradition, Nomad said to the assembled crowd. Not everyone who helps our club can be a member. Not everyone wants to be. But the veterans we've helped, the brothers and sisters who've served this country and found themselves lost, they needed something, an acknowledgement, a connection. He held up a leather vest, smaller than the full cuts the members wore, but carefully crafted. Patches identified military branches, combat deployments. But the center patch read, "Brothers in Arms," with the club's insignia beneath. "This isn't membership," Nomad continued. "It's family. It's recognition that you fought for all of us, and we won't let you fight alone anymore." One by one, the other veterans shared their stories. Gravel's descent into homelessness and slow climb back. Briggs's struggle with addiction and 2 years of sobriety. Riley's battle with survivor's guilt after losing his entire squad. Each story different in details, identical in themes. The darkness, the isolation, the moments someone refused to let them disappear. Then Nomad turned to Isaac. "Your turn, son." Isaac's throat closed. He looked at the faces watching him, people who'd become familiar over 3 months, who knew his bad days and good ones, who'd never once made him feel like a burden. "I was under that overpass for 14 months, he said, voice rough. Waiting to disappear, hoping to disappear. Then I saw someone in trouble and couldn't walk away, even though it scared me, even though I knew I'd probably get hurt." He paused, steadying himself. "I thought I was broken beyond repair, but these people showed me I was just wounded. There's a difference." He looked at Nomad. "They gave me more than a home and a job. They gave me back my purpose. They reminded me that the qualities that made me a Marine, protecting others, loyalty, courage, those don't disappear just because you're struggling. They're still there, waiting." Nomad stepped forward with the vest. As he helped Isaac into it, he said quietly, "Welcome home, Marine." The clubhouse erupted in applause. Isaac felt Sierra's hand squeeze his shoulder, saw Gravel grinning through his own tears. For the first time in 3 years, Isaac felt like he was standing on solid ground. But Nomad wasn't finished. "One more thing," he said, pulling out a laptop. "We reached out to some people. Took some time to track them down." The screen flickered to life, revealing a video call. 3 faces appeared, older than Isaac remembered but immediately recognizable. His surviving squad members from Helmand Province, Rodriguez, Carson, Pike, not dead, alive. Isaac's knees went weak. But the report said, "Different Rodriguez," the man on screen said, his voice thick with emotion. "Different unit, same battle. We tried to find you, brother. After you were discharged, we tried. Thought we lost you too. We never forgot," Carson added. "Never stopped looking. When this club contacted us, said they'd found you. Man, we couldn't believe it," Pike spoke up. "You saved our asses more times than we could count over there. We should have been there for you when you came home. We're sorry, Isaac. We're so damn sorry." Isaac couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Nomad's hand was steady on his shoulder. "You're not lost anymore," Rodriguez said. "You're found. And we're not letting you disappear again. We're coming to visit next month, all of us. Time to rebuild what we should have rebuilt 3 years ago." The call lasted an hour, stories and laughter and tears flowing freely. When it ended, Isaac turned to Nomad, utterly overwhelmed. "How did you—" "We take care of our own," Nomad said simply. "That means all the way, not halfway." The transformation wasn't instant or magical. Bad days still came. Nightmares still struck. But Isaac learned to navigate them with support instead of isolation. Dr. Chen's therapy helped him process trauma he'd buried. The security work gave him purpose and structure. The apartment became home. And slowly, unexpectedly, his relationship with Sierra deepened. It started with casual coffee after therapy appointments, evolved into long conversations about everything and nothing, grew into something neither rushed to define. "You're not a rescue project," Sierra said one evening. 6 months in, as they sat on the apartment's small balcony. "You never were. You're just someone who needed help remembering his own strength. And you helped," Isaac said, taking her hand. "We all did. That's how it works." By the 1-year anniversary of that parking lot night, Isaac was managing the entire security team. He'd helped 3 other homeless veterans into the program, walking the same path Gravel had walked for him. And he'd started something new with Nomad, Operation Homebase, a nonprofit specifically targeting homeless veterans. They worked with the VA, with local shelters, with anyone who'd listen. Nomad provided the resources and connections. Isaac provided the credibility. He'd been there, knew the despair, knew what actually helped versus what sounded good on paper. "You're good at this," Nomad observed one afternoon as they planned an outreach event. "Connecting with these guys, getting through their defenses." "I know where they are," Isaac said. "Know what they're feeling, that they think they're beyond help." He paused. "Someone gave me a second chance when I didn't believe I deserved one. Just trying to pass it forward." The anniversary ceremony was held at the overpass where Isaac had once lived. The encampment was still there, but today it was surrounded by volunteers from the club, the VA, and local support organizations. Tables offered hot food, medical screenings, information about housing programs and job training. Isaac moved through the crowd, handing out resource cards with his personal cell number. A young man, maybe 22, sat apart from the activity, watching with hollow eyes that Isaac recognized. He sat down beside him, said nothing for a long moment. Finally, "What branch?" the young man started, looked at Isaac's vest, saw the patches. "Army, 101st Airborne. Discharged 6 months ago. Marines, Helmand Province. Was homeless this time last year, living under this exact overpass." The young man's eyes widened. "You're the one they talk about, the guy who took a beating defending someone I didn't know." "Yeah." Isaac smiled slightly. "Stupidest, best decision I ever made. Led to the people who pulled me back from the edge. I don't think I can be pulled back," the young man whispered. "I'm too far gone." "I thought that too," Isaac said. "Turns out I was wrong. Let me show you something." He led the young man to where Nomad stood with Gravel, Briggs, Riley, Shepard, and Roadhouse. 6 veterans, all wearing the Brothers in Arms vests, all survivors of the darkness. "These men were where you are," Isaac said. "Where I was. We all thought we were broken beyond repair, but we were just wounded. And wounds can heal if you let people help." The young man looked at each of them, seeing something. Hope, maybe, or possibility. "I don't know where to start. Right here," Nomad said, extending his hand. "With people who understand. With brothers who won't let you fight alone. What do you say, soldier? Ready to come home?" The young man hesitated, then reached out. Nomad's grip was firm, steady. "Step," he said. "Just the first of many. But you don't take them alone." As the afternoon wore on, Isaac watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. 4 more veterans agreed to enter the program. The VA signed up a dozen for follow-up appointments. Connections were made, resources distributed, hope kindled in eyes that had been dark too long. Sierra found him as the sun began to set, the same hour when the parking lot attack had happened 1 year ago. "Thinking about that night?" she asked. "Yeah, can't help it." Isaac turned to her. "I was so scared, convinced I'd lose control, hurt someone, prove I was the dangerous broken thing everyone feared. But I didn't. You saved me," Sierra said. "And in doing that, you saved yourself. Gave my dad and the club a chance to reach you. Funny how that works." Isaac looked back at the overpass, at the activity still happening beneath it. "I spent 14 months trying to disappear. Now I'm trying to make sure others don't." 3 years later, Operation Homebase had helped 62 veterans off the streets and into stable housing and employment. Isaac ran the organization full-time now, Nomad as his partner and advisor. The nonprofit had expanded to 3 cities, funded by a combination of grants, club resources, and community donations. Isaac's nightmares still came sometimes, but less frequently. Dr. Chen had helped him understand he'd always carry his combat experiences, but they didn't have to define him. He'd learned to honor his service without being consumed by survivor's guilt. He and Sierra had married quietly 2 years in, a small ceremony at the clubhouse with both families present. She'd finished her veterinary degree and opened a clinic that offered discounted services to veteran service animals. They'd bought a small house 3 blocks from the clubhouse, close enough to stay connected, far enough to build their own life. But Isaac still visited the overpass every Tuesday evening, still handed out resource cards, still sat with homeless veterans who reminded him of the man he'd been, still made the same promise Nomad had made to him. We don't abandon our brothers. One cold Tuesday in November, 4 years after the parking lot incident, Isaac arrived at the overpass to find a young Marine sitting alone, dog tags visible above his collar. The resemblance to his younger self was striking. Same hollow eyes, same defeated posture, same air of waiting to disappear. Isaac sat down beside him without a word. After a moment, the Marine spoke. "You're the guy, the one they talk about. Used to live here?" "That's me. 4 years ago, this exact spot." Isaac pulled out his phone, showed the Marine a photograph, himself, gaunt and hollow-eyed, taken by the hospital on intake. Then another photo, recent, healthy, standing with Sierra and Nomad at an Operation Home Base event. "Same person?" the Marine asked, disbelieving. "Same person, just different circumstances, different support." Isaac met his eyes. "What unit?" "2nd Battalion, 5th Marines." Isaac's breath caught. "Helmand Province?" "Yeah, how did you—" "Same unit. Different deployment, I'm guessing, but same brotherhood." Isaac felt something settle into place, a sense of rightness. "What's your name, Marine?" "Briggs. Corporal Briggs." Isaac extended his hand. "Isaac, and I've been exactly where you are. Let me tell you about the night that changed everything, and the people who refused to let me fight alone. Then, if you're willing, let me show you the way home." Briggs looked at Isaac's hand for a long moment, then took it. His grip was weak, uncertain, but present. And under the overpass where Isaac had once waited to disappear, he began to speak. Told the story of a parking lot, a moment of instinctive courage, and the brotherhood that had pulled him back from the edge. Told it honestly, including the fear and the failures and the slow, hard work of healing. Told it because someone had told it to him once, in a hospital room, with patience and understanding. Because that's what brothers did. They reached back for the ones still drowning, offered their hand and refused to let go. The sun set over the city, casting long shadows beneath the overpass. But in the gathering darkness, a small light kindled, the same light that had been kindled for Isaac 4 years ago. The light of hope, of second chances, of people who understood that wounded wasn't the same as broken, that some battles were fought alone, but recovery never had to be. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.